Well, I'm really, really pleased to have been invited back to FASEB. This is really one of the jewels of Montgomery County's relationship with the academic enterprise. We want the Baltimore-Washington region to be number 3 by 2023 in the entire United States in terms of biotechnology hubs. And we've got some ways to go because, as you see, we are not number 3 now, and to leapfrog over San Diego, I think, would be difficult. We don't have the surfing. So I don't want to overstate where we are, but I think we have enormous potential here, and I certainly can tell you as one local elected official that this is a goal that I am fully committed to. How do we use the tools that are available to us in local government? How do we partner with state government, and how do we leverage the clout that we have and the proximity we have with the federal government? And I think those are the big questions that preoccupy me. And as I say, we have a lot going for us. We have tremendous resources, as you know better than anyone else. We have these great federal agencies. They're located here. NIH, the largest research agency in the world. FDA, an important regulatory agency. We're trying to leverage the drug and device industry with proximity to FDA, and also not only in the life sciences. We have NIST, we have the Department of Energy. So we're trying to leverage federal labs, but I think, as you all well know, the big challenge is to get to the commercialization of federal research, and that was the topic at the Biotechnology Forum, is that there are all kinds of intellectual barriers in the way. Dr. Austin, it's not in the movie, but when one of the members of the audience defended NIH and defended the integrity of federally funded research, and that it should not be subject to conflicts of interest and commercialization, Dr. Austin, who works at NIH, said, but people are dying. It is very important that we speed these ideas to market. And that's part of why Montgomery County is so proud to be host to the biotechnology industry in the manner that we are, because it is an industry that is so consistent with our values. It is a clean industry. It is non-polluting by and large, but most of all, it is an enterprise that is engaged in curing disease and alleviating suffering. I joke about this. This is not original to me, but we've done very well because of NIH, and we've been able to foster a strong biotechnology industry. Northern Virginia tends to do very, very well with military contractors because they have proximity to the Pentagon. So we say, we are involved in the life sciences and they're involved in the death sciences. Of course, we're happy to have military contractors do business here as well. We're not trying to close our doors to any business activity. We want a strong and healthy commercial environment. So here are some of the things we've done. If I could go to the next slide. So one of the speakers, Rich Bendis, who actually chaired the panel, I convened the panel, and Rich Bendis, who you saw, also a very handsome bald man, is the president and CEO of BioHealth Innovation, Inc., which is a very, very innovative public-private partnership which Montgomery County has appropriated $3 million over the last 6 years. It is not only in Montgomery County, it seeks to foster a healthy biotechnology environment throughout the state of Maryland and all along the I-95 corridor. And as an example of the kinds of things that BioHealth Innovation does, they have an entrepreneur in residence who is a PhD MBA. They bring people out of, often out of graduate school, to monitor very carefully what NIH grants, both intramural and extramural, but of course intramural's right here, so often focusing on intramural, have the potential for commercialization, and then work to identify who's doing the work at NIH, who's doing the grant-funded research, and how can we pair them with venture capital, how can we connect them with companies like MedImmune and AstraZeneca to make things happen. So we've provided, and also BHI sponsors a lot of these kinds of forums and opportunities to cross-pollinate and bring scientists together. So that was a major step that the county took with support from the state, working in partnership with the state. Montgomery County is, I think, unique in the United States that we have a county-level biotechnology tax credit, which is layered on top of the state biotechnology tax credit. And so that has provided incentives of $3.5 million since it was first implemented in 2005 through this year, 2018. And then I am, well, it says we've established, I'm actually promoting. I have legislation pending right now, which would be the first in the United States county level add-on for SBIR and STTR grants. Now, given my history at the Association of American Universities, I know that I know that for research universities, there's always a little concern about leakage to companies. But now that I'm a local elected official, we want to foster more small business startups, and SBIR and STTR are already very well-established programs. And so we are providing a little pat on the back, a little attaboy or attagirl for those companies that are designated by NIH, which is and I think the legislation is going to pass on Tuesday. And so it may not be a huge amount of money. I mean, we have finite resources at the local level. I'm hoping we can appropriate maybe $1 million in this year's budget. And so the recipients might get something in the high 5 figures. But the idea being and that it's unrestricted. And so when we had the public hearing on this SBIR legislation, you know, even if you get $60,000, if you can pay for things that are not covered by the grant, that at your discretion, you know, you may be able to cover more than a year's rent. You may be able to purchase a vehicle. You may be able to pay insurance. There's lots of extras that just having that support from the county also provides leveraging that you can go back to NIH for stage 2 funding, saying, look at the wide range of support we've attracted. Private venture capital and Montgomery County has bought in. So it has a lot of potential to leverage beyond itself, and we're getting a great response from the biotechnology community. Now, on the next 3 items, I want to say, what are the problems? Because we have to be cognizant, if we're competing with San Francisco, Seattle, Austin, San Diego, what drawbacks do we have? And Dr. Austin talked about there's a Starbucks in San Francisco, one Starbucks, where when you go there, any time of the day, you will find about 5 scientists interacting with venture capitalists and investing in startups in this one Starbucks. So proximity obviously matters. The actual physical location actually makes a big difference. And although we are urbanizing and we're a very cosmopolitan suburb, we are still a suburb. Montgomery County is 500 square miles of land. And we don't have one single urban environment. Obviously, we have NIH in Bethesda. We're trying to foster the I-270 corridor. We've got a lot of activity. We've got a lot of wet lab space in Gaithersburg along Perry Parkway. FDA is way over on the other side of the county, and we're trying to promote the adjacency to FDA. We've got United Therapeutics, a fast-growing biotechnology and diagnostics company, which is acquiring a whole lot of real estate in downtown Silver Spring, but we don't have one single location. So proximity is a big challenge for us. We're trying to foster this industry spread out over a large area, and one of the things we heard very clearly at this biotechnology forum is that having people all together is important. So the county needs to play that convening role. But one of the important things that has happened is that the Purple Line is finally under construction. And when you look at some of these other jurisdictions, obviously they have premier research universities. Our premier research university is the University of Maryland at College Park, and the Purple Line will go there. And so NIH and you get on at Medical Center, go to Bethesda, get on the Purple Line. In about 12 minutes, you'll be at the University of Maryland. And that will assist in facilitating what I think could be a tremendous biotechnology network. And then, so finally, from the standpoint of land use and zoning, which is the authority that is unique to county council members, we can zone land. We cannot compel private investment. So we offer these master plans that describe an attractive vision of communities that we hope people want to live and work in. Whether they build out as envisioned by the planners, we can't guarantee that. And this is one of the big challenges of being a local elected official, is that as you're discussing community master plans from the standpoint of what will be the zoning, how much will be devoted to residential, how much will be devoted to retail, how much will be devoted to commercial, what's the outside envelope, how tall will the buildings, how tall may the buildings be? That doesn't mean the buildings will ever be built. And we can put a lot of requirements on private investment. We can demand a lot from housing developers. If you build, for example, you have to, in every housing subdivision, you have to set aside 12.5% below market cost units, affordable housing. What we cannot do is compel housing construction. The investment follows or it doesn't, and market conditions dictate. So we've adopted 2 master plans on the west side and the east side of Montgomery County that have a heavy emphasis on the biotechnology and life sciences enterprise. And the hope of the great Seneca Science Corridor Master Plan, which was heavily pushed by Johns Hopkins, which, as you know, outside of NIH is the second largest life sciences research institution. It's the largest recipient of NIH grants. Johns Hopkins University acquired a big farm, the Bellward Farm, and they want to turn it into a new research campus. But it hasn't happened yet. We adopted the master plan in 2006, so it's been, some time has passed now. We hope that the zoning that we've provided and the opportunity for a research campus and the proximity, NCI has moved out there, as you probably know. National Cancer Institute is there, Johns Hopkins is there, the universities at Shady Grove are all located there. So you would hope that there would be enough adjacency and enough proximity that over time we will build out to be what we hoped it would be, which was a science corridor. And then similarly, we have a vision on the east part of the county adjacent to where FDA is located in White Oak, Maryland, for the White Oak Science Gateway Master Plan. And Washington Adventist Hospital is relocating there, so we're hoping that there will be some synergies where docs in training and people pursuing clinical research, and then people who want to have clinical trials, that somehow there will be a synergy there. But again, as of today, it's a hope. It has not built out. So will we get into the top 3 bioscience hubs by 2023? I'm going to yield now and hear your thoughts and your suggestions about what else we might be doing at the local level. Having FASEB as a representative of the academic enterprise, the interaction with Washington. Obviously, we want more private activity. We're the adjacency to the federal government. A lot of you are in federal relations, like I used to be at AAU. How do we, and of course you're preoccupied with this question as well, how do we commercialize, how do we move into actual job generating and income building activity? I have great confidence in the future of this county. I'm 55 years old. I've lived in Montgomery County for 45 years. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. And because of our commitment to these values of curing disease and alleviating suffering, I think we have more PhDs per capita than any other jurisdiction in the United States. We have the knowledge base, but the biotechnology enterprise, we still hope it will percolate in a manner that exceeds what we have today. So I'm going to yield and engage in dialogue with you, answer any questions, or mostly I'd like to hear your suggestions about does this stimulate your thinking about what more we should be doing in terms of placemaking, in terms of creating a great community where scientists want to be and where companies want to grow. Please.
Not a suggestion, but a question for you. Obviously, Montgomery County is a finalist for the new Amazon headquarters, or the HQ2, yep. Which is very exciting for the county. Mm-hmm. How do you see that as an asset that could possibly help achieve that goal of moving from number 5 to number 3? Do you see a connection there?
So, I'm glad you asked about Amazon. We're talking about it all the time. We don't know if it will come. And we're buffeted by the winds of public opinion. Susan Kennedy from our communications office was the master of ceremonies at a town hall meeting two nights ago, Wednesday night, where I've been going to these county council town hall meetings for 15 years. This was the first time where we're going to have to bleep out the comment. There is a national movement which has sort of merged Occupy Wall Street and the Democratic Socialists of America, and they're protesting Amazon. And they think communities should not be bidding on Amazon. And one of the gentlemen who cursed at us, literally, is part of that movement. Well, we don't know if we're going to get Amazon. I can tell you that if Montgomery County, Maryland was not one of the 260 communities around the United States that bid on Amazon, we would be tossed out of office for political malpractice. I mean, it's an enormous economic development opportunity. 50,000 jobs just at Amazon, each paying an average of $100,000 a year, high-tech jobs, and $5 billion private investment from the company, leveraging $18 billion of economic growth statewide, according to the SAGE Policy Institute economic study that the Maryland Department of Commerce commissioned. So to walk away from that amount of revenue and tax base increase, we would rightly be attacked for it. The prospect that it might come is making a lot of constituents nervous. So if it comes, will there be more traffic? If it comes, will there be more school crowding? If it comes, will housing prices rise? Well, yes, each of those indicators are indicators of a desirable and successful place, each of those. We have a lot of traffic here because employment is high. People are working, they're going to work. Schools are overcrowded because they're really good. And housing prices are high because of supply and demand. People want to be here. But of course, those are challenges and they bring stress and strain. The reality is we're now in the second round for Amazon. We're one of 20 communities around the United States. We started out one of 260. So that speaks very well of our high quality of life, of the knowledge of our workforce, highly educated, highly trained, the diversity of our workforce, good access to public transportation. All of those things speak well of us, but we may not get Amazon. And for all the protesting that is going on now at the prospect that we might get Amazon, if or when we don't get Amazon, people will be screaming at us for that. So, how did you lose Amazon? So I'm trying to stay on an even keel. There's no doubt that if the largest technology corporation in the world comes here, as in Seattle, it will leverage other types of technology investment. Not necessarily in the life sciences, but certainly there's applicability. I mean, you want to have supercomputing. You want to have knowledge industries that are co-located and that cross-pollinate. And I want to remind people that we have a great economic climate now. So if we don't get Amazon, it's still a great place to live, but there is going to be a great, sort of crashing feeling of disappointment if we don't get it. But yes, if it comes, it will be a huge change in the built environment, in the economic landscape, in the growth industries, and how we sort of think of ourselves. Because IT, which everybody seeks, and which is the biggest growth industry today in the 21st century, our concentration has more been on biotechnology and life sciences. We want IT. If Amazon comes here, we'll be very strong in the IT space. What our core strength is biotechnology and life sciences. There's a lot of overlap between those two. If Amazon comes, it'll broaden our vision, I think, of what our core industries are. Right now, biotechnology is right at the heart of what we think our core industry is.
Yes, so George, Chris Austin made a statement that I think is very important. Mm-hmm. When you look at the cities where there are biotech startups, they're all mostly cities where there are large, very prestigious research universities. Mm-hmm. Because from what I remember about the economics literature, many of those startups were founded by people working at the research universities who then took their ideas and created businesses. At universities, many faculty members have encouragement and support for off-campus activities. At the NIH, to go back to Chris Austin's statement, there is that intellectual fence that was raised a few years ago that prevents people from doing the kind of part-time, on-campus, off-campus activity that encouraged people at universities to set up the companies.
That's right.
So we do have that disadvantage, and there's a federal policy issue here that limits our local growth because of some of those restrictions.
Well, I know that all of your societies are engaged in that issue and working with Congress all the time. And I don't think it's a partisan issue. The people who attended, the industry folks who attended this biotech forum were very excited. I didn't know how it was going to work. I didn't know how many people would show up. And we had about 60 people. I mean, for a first effort, it was quite good. And they were, a lot of high-level people and some, very young, recent, grads and scientists. So they said, well, let me know when the next one is. I didn't know if I was going to have a next one, and I still don't know for sure, but if I do, I'm certainly going to invite Congressman Raskin and Senators Cardin and Van Hollen, because it is very important that we make this clear to our congressional delegation. And NIH is a huge research campus, but we do have the University of Maryland. I mean, so, I thought where you were going with the question was, don't we need a research university located in Montgomery County? And if, knowing what I know about the size of endowment, the physical infrastructure, what it takes to build a research university, I don't think that's likely. But Johns Hopkins has its satellite campus. We have the universities at Shady Grove, and College Park is just a 12-minute ride away on the Purple Line. So we do have actual universities here, not in the classic sense. We don't have MIT. But the University of Maryland is really, going way up in the rankings, including in the life sciences and biotechnology. And NIH, we need to loosen those intellectual restrictions and treat NIH more like a research campus.
Because the opportunity to dip your toe into the commercialization waters is something that university scientists can do without giving out their main source of income and their security.
That's correct.
And if NIH employees had more flexibility in some of those areas, I think it would be a real benefit to the economic growth in the county.
No question about it, and that was Dr. Austin's message, and as I'm able to communicate that to our members of Congress, who I all know very well, I'll do that, but we need to get them engaged as well, because historically the Maryland delegation has been the strongest booster of NIH, and it will, even though there's been some changes in personnel, Senators Sarbanes and Mikulski are gone, we worked with both of them, we have a very strong delegation still, and making sure that they're sophisticated and educated about the issues of tech transfer and commercialization is something I'm committed to, and I want to bring them in to understand that and hear that directly from the field. Please.
I wanted to make you aware of a potential obstacle that actually is coming from Annapolis. I was there on Tuesday testifying against a piece of legislation that's actually sponsored by Delegate Kramer from Montgomery County. And he is seeking to regulate the adoption at the end of research of dogs and cats, and also to put reporting requirements on it. And although he said he was not against research itself, the tone of his remarks and some of the things he said made me question. And in fact, at one point he said, if this legislation doesn't pass now, I'm going to seek legislation to outlaw research with dogs and cats in the state of Maryland. And the reason I think it's relevant here is that, if you're going to take a drug to market, you're going to have to do toxicity testing. And so I think that's already having a chilling effect on companies in the state that might want to commercialize something. And he was really dismissive of the counter arguments that, certainly Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland, which are the biggest players, they already have internal adoption programs, which his legislation would sweep away. It would have to be done through outside groups, and they couldn't continue adopting through their own staff.
Really?
Yeah. And the other point...
Why? I don't, even from an animal welfare perspective, I know you don't agree with him, but what would be the reason?
I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he doesn't trust that the people who are working with animals, the veterinarians, the caretakers, that they actually have the animals' interests at heart. And I think there's also a lack of understanding of why some animals can be adopted and others can't. I mean, if you're doing a toxicology study, or if you're studying a systemic disease, you're going to have to do basically, an autopsy, look at tissues at the conclusion of the research. And that goes to the problem with the other thing that he was insisting on, which is reporting requirements. Just based on the tone of his remarks and the fact that he wanted to threaten simply to outlaw the research, I'm convinced, and we said this in our testimony, if you start taking statistics, this many dogs this year, this many dogs that year were adopted or whatever, people are going to use it as a scorecard and be very hostile when it actually has to do with, what was the level of research funding, what was the nature of the research. So I am very concerned about that, and several Montgomery County delegates and senators are sponsoring the legislation without listening to the other side.
That's extremely interesting, and I've passed some animal welfare legislation which had nothing whatsoever to do with laboratory testing, didn't impinge on it at all. So I have relationships with some of the advocates there, and I would be happy to try to be an intermediary and see if there's some happy medium that we can work out, because I think Delegate Kramer is motivated by good intent, but I also know that he's a big advocate for economic development, and the linkage to our biotechnology industry is something I'd be happy to communicate with him about. I know him very well. Please.
So George, first, thank you for coming in.
Thank you. It's great.
Very interesting presentation. One comment and then a question for you. So the staff here is kind of learning that I'm a big advocate for collaboration.
Indeed.
So one element that's really, I don't think it's gotten the press that it should have gotten, is the 3 of the top 20 finalists for HQ2 are right here.
Right here.
And how can those 3 jurisdictions, knowing there's a lot of money involved, how can you work together more effectively?
Absolutely.
To make sure that, because the benefit's going to impact all 3 no matter where it ends up, right? So how can you do that to make sure that it's at least one of the 3 and not one of the 17?
Right.
Right. So that's just a comment that I think is important. But getting back to the video, in the video, and Howard referred to this also, this intellectual wall.
Yes.
Right? My question is, is there a way that Montgomery County can help facilitate the connection between the very large life sciences association and society community with these biotech firms who all depend upon the basic research that our societies provide? I mean, we have the heads of the largest societies here in Montgomery County.
Yes, I'm aware.
That are responsible for that. Can we be a bridge over or tunnel through, if you will, between the NIH community and the funding community and all of that knowledge and this biotech sector? How can we build that linkage through our membership base?
Great. Two excellent questions. So, first of all, the most important thing that DC, Maryland, and Virginia can do in partnership to attract Amazon is strengthen Metro. And that's happening. So I think the prospect of Amazon has kind of clarified everybody's thinking. And so you've seen legislation move in Annapolis, in DC, in Richmond to provide a permanent long-term funding stream, which is what Metro says it needs to borrow against to make the capital investments that will fix the things that bother all of us, the escalators and the rolling stock and the track closings and all of the things that make Metro so unreliable, all of the physical plant issues that can be addressed with a substantial amount of bonding against a permanent guaranteed revenue stream. So I'm very optimistic that that will occur. So that's the most important thing that the 3 jurisdictions can partner on. In terms of direct incentives, we're 3 different states. So Maryland can't do anything to reduce income taxes if the company goes to Virginia. The law doesn't work that way. I do agree that if Amazon comes to the District of Columbia, it will be a substantial benefit for Montgomery County residents who will get jobs at Amazon, and that we ought to look at that as a win. Somewhat less so for Virginia, depending on where they go. I mean, distance is an issue. How many Montgomery County residents are going to travel all the way to Virginia, and how hard will that commute be?
I know one that does it the other way every day.
Sure. Well, no, I understand. I mean, I do agree that if it comes to the region, that's good for the region. And, I have to be candid. My time as a county council member is winding down. I hope to continue in public service. I'm a candidate for county executive. So I can only speak to what I would hope to be able to do. I don't know what will happen next. Regionalism is very important. And what I would love to see in the future is really a regional ceasefire. We should not be spending public dollars to raid jobs from the District of Columbia or from Virginia, because it really isn't a net win. And so I would really like to see a dialogue with the 2 governors and the mayor and with the county leaders in all of the counties around the DC area, that we would agree that we're not going to steal your jobs. When a big company comes from outside, it is somewhat different. I mean, most of our public will not view it as a win for Montgomery County, if Amazon locates in Fairfax or Loudoun. It won't be perceived that way. The Council of Governments, the Washington Metropolitan Council of Governments, doesn't have a lot of teeth as a, it convenes elected officials, and there's some things, including the metro discussion, that have been fruitful there, and the metro discussion is advancing. But there isn't, just given the nature of the three very different jurisdictions, there isn't a single mechanism by which we could submit one bid, nor are the interests of each community. I mean, we're very fortunate that all three communities are in the top 20. It's as I say, if we had not submitted a bid, we'd be tossed out for political malpractice. And if we just said, well, let Virginia have it, our business community wouldn't like that either. I mean, our business community views Northern Virginia as the competition. So that's the reality we deal with. There is communication among the jurisdictions. I agree that a regional collaboration is very desirable, and the advancing on Metro, I think, is a reason to be optimistic. I still, I work for Montgomery County. If it goes to Northern Virginia, we won't consider that a win in quite the same way. But, better for the regional economy if it goes to Northern Virginia than if it goes to Atlanta or Philadelphia. So you have to weigh, Go ahead.
The other side, though, how can we connect, or can Montgomery County facilitate the connection between the biotech industry?
Of course, absolutely.
Which directly benefits from the work of our research scientists.
Right.
Is there a way to facilitate or strengthen that?
Absolutely. I'm sorry I neglected your second question. So I went to elementary school with Jamie Raskin. I've known him my whole life. I've been actively involved in Montgomery County politics for 30 years. I've known Chris Van Hollen that long. So the relationships that we have with our congressional delegation are strong. And every year the county provides a book to the congressional delegation of, these are county priorities, these are things that we need. And I absolutely am committed myself to getting very sophisticated and working with our congressional delegation on how might these intellectual property and ethics and what used to be called bi-dole, I don't know if that's still in place today, what are some reforms, and if I have a second meeting, or even if I don't, I'll engage in the conversation about that. What is the goal that we seek? If there's a change to federal law that will facilitate, for example, intramural bench scientists serving on governing boards of pharmaceutical companies, which is what Chris Austin called out, what would that change to law look like? And could we marshal a strong argument for that? Again, I don't think that would be a partisan issue. I think Democrats and Republicans would both see the benefit of that if we're speeding products to market and generating, economic growth. So I'm certainly interested in facilitating that conversation at the county level because the benefit to the county is very clear, and my relationships with the congressional delegation are very good. I don't mean to assume that they're not already very sophisticated on these issues, but they're fairly new. I mean, Chris has been in the House for a while, but he's new to the Senate. Jamie just got in the House. So, I think it's an area where they could stand to get up to speed, and I'd like to get more up to speed. I don't know, maybe I mean, FASEB would be a natural place to work on it. If there is a specific fix, do you know? Is there a fix to federal law that we are proposing at this time that would address this issue of the intellectual fence?
Something that we haven't really spent a lot of time on.
Yeah.
It's something that I think we can probably...
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to partner with FASEB on trying to develop, how could we address that? What are the specific ethics and employment prohibitions that could be amended? I mean, I'm a lawmaker. I'd be delighted to work on that in whatever capacity I'm in the future. Please.
So a lot of our societies have been seeing many scientists interested in getting involved in advocacy. So my question is, I guess, where do you see scientists playing a role in advocating at local governments?
Elected officials respond to the people we see and hear. If the ferment, if the nightlife, if the entertainment options, if the public transportation options that were described at that biotech forum are appealing to the millennial generation of recent PhDs who we hope are going to come up with the great discoveries of the future, then please come testify at the county council. We take up the budget every year for the and we do the capital budget every 2 years. Right now we're debating how much will we invest in a new White Flint Metro entrance, how much will we invest in roads versus transit versus bike trails, all kinds of things that are of great interest to scientists in terms of the quality of life of where they want to locate. So absolutely more interface with local, state, and federal government. I always encourage it. I mean, I'm out in the community a lot, but we get testimony on specific pieces of legislation at hearings with public witnesses, and that skews our perspective on how people feel because time is limited and we have to be there at the public hearing. So if 30 people show up at a public hearing and they're in favor of a bill or against a bill, you come away thinking that's how the public feels, even though it's entirely self-selected. We don't know how the broad public feels. The broad public has never even heard of the bill. So, showing up matters. Being seen and heard matters. Staying in touch with my office, if you want more, I don't mean to assume what it is that you think scientists want. I need to hear from the scientists, but absolutely being present and being heard and developing relationships with elected officials, that's how public policy moves. That's how decisions get made.
Please.
What sort of role is Montgomery County able to play as a convener and facilitator to connect entrepreneurial science to private funders and to assist with technology transfer from researchers to biotech firms?
That is precisely why we endowed the BioHealth Innovation Inc. That's just what you've described could be the mission statement for BHI. And it's had a lot of success. A lot of patents, a lot of new startups, a lot of VC, so, that's precisely why we created this entity.
Do you see a role for FASEB, something we could be doing to assist with tech transfer?
I would encourage you to invite my friend Rich Bendis to come and give one of these talks and let him describe to you, and I'll put him in touch with you. I'll put him in touch with Howard. Let him describe to you the work that BHI is doing and how the academic societies could promulgate the work that we're doing here locally, and to get it, because I know your societies have members all around the United States, including right here. And BHI, as I say, is throughout the I-95 corridor. They're not just limited to Montgomery County. So I would encourage you to bring him here and have him speak to you as well. Go ahead.
First, thank you for coming. It's very
So glad to be
interesting.
here. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciated your comment about the military and what Virginia has, what Montgomery County has. But what Montgomery County also has right across the street from NIH is, now they call it Walter Reed, but you have NAMRI, you have AFRI,
Sure do.
you have a lot of organizations. And within those organizations, I'm wondering, is the fence twice as high between, the military as it is with NIH? Because you have a lot of privately funded and for-profit contractors within Montgomery County that supply scientists to those labs. And I'm just wondering, are there more partnerships to be had there? And they work even with NIH. There's a malaria vaccine research project from Walter Reed. You have a great little science museum on Linden Lane now too, that came from DC. So I'm just wondering if there's more opportunity there.
Absolutely. I should have mentioned Walter Reed. It's a great federal facility, and we're very fortunate to have it. It's primarily a hospital, but I understand, as you mentioned malaria, that there are also research implications. So I should have mentioned Walter Reed. When we mention our great federal facilities, NIH, FDA, Walter Reed, no doubt about it. As with FDA, NIH, as you know, is the #1 source of basic research funding, new knowledge, new discovery in the world, and it dwarfs any other academic institution or federal agency. FDA is more of a regulatory agency. Walter Reed is more of a hospital, although you have the USIS, the Uniformed Services University Health Sciences campus, where there is some research and obviously medical education going on. So yes, I agree, we can leverage all of our facilities. I don't want to leave any out, and I should have mentioned Walter Reed. And furthermore, it's a point of great pride. That our wounded warriors who are in service around the globe are treated and cared for and looked after right here in Bethesda, Maryland. It's absolutely something that it's an honor to have them here.
But I think even NAMRI, the Navy Medical Research Institute, and AFRI, they do some things that you shouldn't be talking about, but they do some things that are very relevant because they're working on vaccines, which everybody can help everybody.
Indeed.
They're for different purposes, but they're just as valuable, and they have private funds going into them in terms of Montgomery County residents working there with for-profit contractors.
It's an absolutely fantastic point. No, it's an absolutely fantastic point, and all of our federal installations need to be included in our inventory of assets, including when we market ourselves to Amazon and to other entities that are considering locating here. So it's an absolutely fabulous point, and I know that Scientific Society, I knew I would learn a lot by being here, not just impart my knowledge to you. So your point's extremely well taken, and I always hope to come away knowing more than I did when I walked in the room. So, yeah.
So when I look at your slides, I think about developing the workforce that we'll need in Montgomery County for this, and I'm also a parent with children in the Montgomery County public schools, and I know we have some fantastic programs. There's Montgomery Blair, there's the new biotech program at Wheaton. Has the county looked at expanding some of these programs to help us grow the workforce that we would need?
Thank you very much for asking that question. We elect an independent school board, and the school board hires the school superintendent. Other elected officials, the county council, the county executive, we appropriate the budget for the school system, but we do not tell them how to spend it, and we do not dictate issues of curriculum. Having said that, the Prince George's County executive is deeply involved in the management of his school system, and the mayor of the District of Columbia is deeply involved. She hires her school chancellor and is deeply involved in the management of that school system. So you don't have to look very far to see an example of the chief executive of a local jurisdiction heavily invested in how the schools are constructed. The school board doesn't have to listen to me. Over the years on the county council, I've raised issues about nutrition in the cafeteria. I've raised issues about recycling. I've raised issues about expanding access to language education. They're courteous to me, but not everything that I would like to see happen has happened. I'd like to see less, sweet and sugary snacks for sale in the cafeteria. And it's been incremental, little by little, progress has been made. Again, I don't know how long I'll be in public office in Montgomery County. My vision is a whole lot more choice, a whole lot more specialty programs so that young people can pursue their passion, not necessarily only in the school that happens to be located in the zip code where they live. And so a whole lot more biotechnology academy, more robotics, more coding, more language. I think the key to global competitiveness, including in biotechnology, we already are able to say that we have 140 different languages spoken in our schools. We're already able to communicate with companies around the world, including in biotechnology, that we have a highly trained, skilled workforce that speaks your language. But we need to continue to reinforce that and make that true. The fact that the first generation moved here from Pakistan or El Salvador or Turkey or speaks the language. The second generation may lose it unless you retain it. China, I think the smartest investment the next generation that we can make in the next generation is to teach it Chinese. I mean, that's the largest market, after the United States. And so more specialty academies, more opportunities for children to really get excited and motivated about their education would improve the training of the workforce, would alleviate some of the crowding pressure, because the most prestigious schools like Walter Johnson, Walt Whitman, kids might pursue specialty curriculum elsewhere, like in Wheaton, and it would address what we have, unfortunately, which is de facto segregation. The black and brown kids don't have access to the same opportunities as the white and Asian American kids. So that's my vision, exactly as you describe. Whether I'll get to promote that vision or not depends on the voters this year.
Well, thank you, George.
Tremendous. Thank you so much. This was great.